morning guys, it's Wednesday, it's frosty. We're going to Twyford and my tyre does not need blowing up. Let's go to the garage and get a coffee. See you at the job. Wait for the orange light to go out because that's when the glow plugs have done their job. There we go. Another blast. Normally takes 2 or 3 goes when it's cold. Yeah, my God. Here we go. How you doing guys? We are inside the building and let's have a look at this beautiful little room that we need to make even more beautiful by making all the walls nice and flat and smooth. So it will be a tremendous kitchen once everything is done. So I did come here previously in the week or last week and give the guys some advice. So the ceiling has been overtaxed because there was an issue with the, it was similar to this, it was a stipple, but it had like a very shiny paint, almost like an oil-based, I mean, I don't know if that's a silk, but it's a very strong silk. Anyway, the paint was failing from the Artex, which is getting you back to that dusty sort of distemper sort of thing. So we could obviously stick to the paint which is on the Artex, but the paint that's on the Artex isn't stuck very well, so that's where your weak point of the bond was. So I recommended, and it was all cuts and joints and it was cracked all over the place, so recommended for such a small room, it got overtacked. Also, a lot of this finish coat plaster was failing in places, so you kind of have to be a little bit careful when you're taking this off. I advise them anything that's loose, and my rule tends to be if you can get it off with your bare hands, it really needs to come off. When you start getting a tool behind it and start popping it, it ruptures the next bit, ruptures the next bit, ruptures, you know, and before you know it, you've gone around the whole room. So he's gone round and removed everything that's particularly loose, revealing what we can see now. So we can see, look, this must have had tiles on it, and where the tiles have come off, that's actually upset the finish coat of plaster. And you will notice that the backing coat, which is over blocks, is solid walls. You really don't see this sort of stuff so much these days at all. It's sand and cement. And this had the same issue again, where the sand and cement would have been done quite a while ago, and it had been done, I assume, with maybe just plasticizer in it, no additive like SBR or any hardener or anything like that. So again, this was very, very kind of dusty, and we would have trouble to adhere to that as well. So what I advised the guy to do was, as you saw, overtack the ceiling, get off anything that's loose, and then prior to me coming, now you could use SBR, I told him to use PVA. PVA is good enough for inside. SBR is a little bit overkill from my opinion, and I don't like to kill all the suction unless I really have to. So what he's done is PVA'd this a good couple of times, well over 24 hours before I got here, which has really given that chance for the PVA to actually properly cure and soak in, because sometimes if you come to try and PVA something that's really porous that day, and plaster over it, then you'll PVA it will soak into the really dusty, porous surface, and then you'll feel it go, oh, okay, that's yeah, I can feel it's touch dry, it's probably really good to go over. So what's happened is the air's got to the surface of it, dried the surface, but inside is still wet and tacky. And again, you're back to this point where you've created a skin over the top, so you stop plastering, and then all of a sudden the skin pulls away from the wet, pasty surface, dusty surface that's underneath it. So yeah, something that's really, really, you want to stabilise something, you kind of need to do it the day before. You're pushing your luck a little bit if you try to stabilise it a couple of hours before you plaster it. So the longer you can give that stabilising solution, whatever it is you've used to stabilise, The longer you give it, the better. So a good, at least overnight, I'll say, and you're in some sort of safe territory there. What else have we got to mention? Okay, so, do you know what, I'm going to put it in another clip because I might turn it into a short. Hold on. Right, so I've started to come in and put up my scrim tapes, my fibrous glass fibre tape or nylon tape which goes over the cracks, and I've noticed that there is quite a bit of bounce on these joints, sorry. It's coming up on camera, some a little bit more worse, and it's obviously, it's down the joists, but they're, the original ceiling was so undulated. Look, this one must have been quite bad, so he's put a stitch in here. We've done other videos how to repair a cracked ceiling recently. So I've screwed over this one, but you can see there's a big bounce in that. Now what I'm going to do, because I know this has been over-tacked, so this I can see from the holes here, look, he's used pretty much 12.5 board, and then there's a 12.5 board as well on top of that, and a layer of Artex. So we've got, in this situation, 38mm drywall screws. Now let's have a look what's going on. Now if we put these screws in at an angle like so, we're going through that much plasterboard. The more we create, we're not even coming out. So I'm always really careful about blindly putting screws into places because you don't know what's up there. Pipes, wires, etc. So what we're going to do on all these joints is we're going to fire a screw in at an angle like this. So it's going to go through and it's going to go into the plasterboard and cross this, okay? And then we're going to put one in the other side. So we're going to get, what do they call it when they, sometimes you see it on old buildings where they put the cross timbers in between joists. I'm trying to do everything in one hand. So hopefully what we're going to get is inside. So this is probably a good, so that's the depth. This, just making this up as we go along. So that's the depth of our plasterboard. So we're going to cross our screws like this all the way down the joint and put them in at an angle so that these actually, you know, the plasterboard ends there, that's where the joint is, right in the middle, and the screw is going to pull across both sides and hopefully pull that board up enough so it holds itself together. And because they're at an angle, they can't, you know, fall out this way. And it's very unlikely they're going to slide out this way. If they went up this way, then of course, obviously, you still got your crack over there. And because we're going into plasterboard, this can go up and down. But by crossing them and putting them in an angle, like so, hopefully, we'll be able to solid that right up with minimal effort. So I'm just going to pop that scrim down, and that's what we're going to do. Okay, so these two holes here haven't got any screws in them, but let's have a look at the little bounce in them here and here. We're going to put the screws in as I aforementioned, and then we will look back at it and see how sturdy that joint has become. Yeah. Okay, let me just show you this just for demonstration purposes. So this is the sort of angle we're going in at. It's got enough purchase that it is actually causing the impact driver to click, but as you can see, I mean, it looks a little bit unsightly because we're drawing the screwing at an angle. It's causing these little flaps, but they're not an issue because we're going to get the scrims over them. And like, as you can see, it has in fact taken a hell of a lot of bounce out of that. It's much better than it was. Where'd you come from? Alright, doggy. Alright, come on, have a sniff. I'm sure we'll be friends in no time. There we go, look, I just added to the next one. It looks much more neater than that one that I've peppered, look. So, yeah, you can see what's happened there. And it doesn't look as rough as that where I've made a mess of it. I'm getting the hang of it. Now, just to add as well, I'm not too worried about this absolutely being perfectly level with each other. I'm more worried about taking the bounce out of them because as a plasterer, if there is I mean, it's only very minor anyway. Then, you know, the plaster's going to cover this, and so is the scrim tape. So yeah, that is looking much more sturdy. And we're going to do that to all of these, and I suspect it will be on these as well. There we go. You see there's a slight kick on this ceiling, so we've got a bit of a bend there. But we have literally peppered that joint all the way along on both sides. He's used the smaller sheets here. He's just been as well and advised me that the original ceiling was 9mm board, and he put 9mm board over the top of that. So we've got a depth of 18 up there now, and there's also a layer of Artex in between. So that is pretty much all we can do to try and prevent cracks that I predict would have happened. There's certainly less chance of them happening after doing that, and we're going to fibre tape these all right up now. I remember the only reason that that method can be used in this situation is because it's been overtaxed, so there's plasterboard behind the board. If it hadn't been overtaxed, then there's no point in doing that, because you'd just be screwing into thin air and it'll be doing nothing at all. Hippo scrim is in position. Beads. Cut with tin snips. Very often I will staple them. Okay, so we have all the beadwork done, and as you can see, I've had a little bit of trouble around this window getting into this rock hard stuff here. The staples haven't been getting in there very well, and the fitter here didn't leave me enough beads, so I've had to put a couple of joints in. Like there's one there. Now if you notice, I've actually used the machine edges. I've cut this edge and I've cut this edge, so the machine edges are a lot easier to join up. Tiny little gap there, but we'll make that up with plaster. It's actually not looking too bad, and I've had to put a joint down here as well on this sill thing. So, but other than that, all the angles, the corners are all meeting up nicely, which is very important. And over here, the same has occurred. As you can see, I have managed to get staples in. There's lots of ways you can put beads up. Using staples is my go-to. If I can get staples in and I can use it, it's dry, it's quick, it's easy, I will go to staples. If not, if I do have a little bit of trouble, then I will drop down to putting scrims on each side. And if that's not working, you're probably going to have to stick them with a little bit of multi-finish or whatever you have knocking about. Now, in some cases here, look, this staple has not gone in perfectly good, so all I'm going to do is just flatten it out with a hammer so that it doesn't protrude over the actual finished area of the bead. Since I've got my stapler out, and there is a slight bend on here, there might be a little bit of weight on this scrim, and you don't want too much wet, heavy, unstable weight on scrims, because there is a possibility it will pull them off. So since I've got the stapler out, just a double, you should be good. But we're just going to chuck in some staples, and as you can see, it just takes a few seconds. Okay, so as far as scrimming and beading up is concerned, we are all prepped. What I'm going to do now, even though that these walls had already been PVA'd previously and it's all set and stabilised, I am going to give them another coat again, especially the more porous areas. If we have a look at this wall over here, it's probably not going to be too far off in suction in the way that the surface draws the moisture out of the plaster, because we've got bone dry plaster there, and even though that's the floating coat, it's probably not too different in suction rates. But when we've got something such as this one over here, so now we've got bone dry plaster here, but then we're going onto a painted surface which hardly has any suction. So if we didn't treat this up and try and balance these levels out, what's going to happen is you're going to put your wall on, you're going to put your first coat of plaster, this area is going to stay really wet, this area is going to start getting pulled in all the moisture out of it, and you're not going to be able to plaster it very well. This is going to go off a lot quicker than this. So this is why we need to, PVA or SBR would be great in this situation, because SBR stabilizes and kills all suction literally with one neat coat. With PVA, you might find that you're giving it 2, 3, maybe 4 coats, depending how bad it is, to try and balance things out a little bit. So just quickly, just in case you don't know and you're a DIYer and you've never seen anything like this before, PVA, polyvinyl acetate. Some people think that A stands for adhesive. It's PVA adhesive, and as you can see, it suggests that it can be used as an adhesive, a primer and a sealer. Now I tend to tip mine into a tub. It's so difficult doing things with one hand. And you can see how thick it is coming out the tub. Different brands have different viscosities. This stuff is quite thick, which would indicate to me it's fairly strong. So you're probably going to want to water it down, sometimes maybe 5 parts water to 1 part PVA. Depends exactly what you want it to do, but a rule of thumb is to get it up to sort of like a single cream sort of standard. I keep mine in this tub permanently, has a lid that goes on top. It's pretty watertight. I can put that in the back of the van and just leave it, and I've always got a little bit of mixed up PVA ready to rock and roll on my roller, on a pole. And I have a little brush in there for awkward areas like getting into corners, etc. So I've just smashed around all these walls with the PVA, making sure we've got a good coat, especially on these high suction areas that I mentioned earlier. Now, it's a good idea to make sure you get right into there, look, and having like an exterior fluffy roller will really help you out in getting into all these little nooks and crannies and properly getting in there and sealing the whole thing. Another thing to note when you're using PVA or SBR for that fact, you need it to go off a little bit. So on the high suction areas, it will pull in pretty quick. On the low suction areas, like paint over here, the PVA is going to remain a lot wetter for a lot longer. And if you try to plaster over wet PVA or SBR, then what's going to happen is the surface is going to be too wet. The plaster is thicker than the PVA or SBR, and it's going to slide all over the place and mix with the actual plaster and upset it. So you do need it to tack up, especially with PVA. They suggest that you go over it when it becomes tacky, but tacky is a very subjective word, isn't it? You'll be surprised how far you can let that PVA go, because unlike SBR, PVA does kind of like reactivate when you put the plaster on, and the water from the plaster gets back into that PVA and livens it back up again, and when it all dries, it does its job and actually adheres the plaster to the wall. So yeah, it's a good idea to get the PVA or SBR on well advanced, so you've got time to get your tools out or whatever, get it ready for knocking up, so it's got time just to pick up a little bit. I think I forgot to mention on this particular job, which is going to be a kitchen, and I'm doing this for a kitchen fitter, surprise, surprise. So all I really need to do on the walls in here is actually just come down to below 900, because all these walls are going to have work surfaces and cupboards all the way around, and the cupboards are going to cover everything. The cupboards have a back to them, so none of this is going to be seen at all. So yeah, the walls are just coming down to 900, so we'll come down to about there all the way around, except for this area here. So I'm going to come all the way down to the bottom here, and we've got this breakthrough, and as you'll see, the skirting is quite low, so we need to come down low, and here I'm going to have to feather in around this opening. Do you know what, to be honest with you, what we will do here is probably come up and hit that coving, because the amount of time it's going to take you to feather in and the tension, you might as well come up to a hard edge. The same as this here, we might as well take it into this internal corner here all the way, rather than just try and blend it in at this area. For the sake of a couple of trowelfuls of gear, it's going to be easier to hit that all the way across. While all that PVA is picking up, now we've got time to get all our buckets out and stuff and get ready for doing some actual plastering. Okay, so we are just about ready to rock and roll. We've got our multi-finish there, 4 bags of. I've got some water buckets ready to go. I have my DeWalt battery mixer, which is well handy. I love it. They're pretty common now. I got this a year before they come out, directly from DeWalt as a tester. I've got a little crate to stand on because the ceiling's quite low. That's all I need in here. I've got my main bucket for mixing up plaster, and I've got some water in there ready to go. I've got my hawk and trowel, which is a 16-inch hawk and a 20-inch trowel. I love using this thing. A lot of experienced plasterers tend to lose their minds when they see me throwing that thing around the room and ask lots of questions about it. I have a splash bucket here, which contains my wet brush for cleaning off my trowel and my hawk, and I also have a bucket scoop here for getting the plaster out of the bucket. Again, not all jobs can take a board and stand. I haven't used a board and stand in ages, so I do take out the bucket. I have thrown down a couple of dust sheets to soak up some excess water, and you see my water supply is here on this tap through this pipe, and you can't help but let it leak out, because when you turn the tap off, water gets trapped in that pipe, and as you can see, it started to make water on the floor already. So this floor is plyboarded, and I assume will be tiled over or some sort of thing, but even though we don't really have to worry about protecting the floor too much, I do like to put the dust sheets down just to use them as doormats and help keep the mess down and keep the mess off the bottom of your feet. Over here we have our washing out bucket. So once I've locked up with my whisk in there, I'll bring my whisk and I'll wash it round in this water, spin it round, and I've got this old pasting brush just to give it that last little clean up. So we are pretty much ready to knock up some plaster. Now, a general plasterer of some experience would probably quite easily be able to get 2 bags in that bucket and start knocking up 2 bags, but I'm probably going to knock up just over a bag, start getting this ceiling on, see what I've got left in the bucket, maybe pick off some reveals, see how it's going. I might give some of these walls here, this floating area, a pre-fill before touching these. So I don't know, there's no real plan, make it up as you go along. General rule is start at the top, pretty much work your way down. So let's make it up as we go along. So there we go, we have the plaster mixed up, and we're going to get the ceiling on. So I'm not going to go into how to actually apply the plaster. On this video, I'm going to assume that you already know how to do that. So this is going to be sort of like a video for intermediate plasterers, or experienced plasterers who just can't get enough of watching plastering videos. If you do want to know how to put plaster on, there's plenty of other beginners tutorials on the playlist, so have a look at that. Like the clue will be in the title, where it would be like plastering for beginners. Let's see how we started this room initially. Oh no, I've forgotten that. I'm going to get that on. I've come across the joints with a tight coat, and then I've dropped down onto these porous areas in a way of prepping them up. I'll put a tight coat on here so that the plasterboard starts working and pulling this coat in. The thicker the coat, the more water on here, the less chance you're going to get of it pulling into those awkward, nasty joints, even though it's the same bucket of plaster. So I put these joints on, then I've gone there, and now I'm going to come back to the ceiling and give it its proper coat. But I'm going to do that joint first. Right, so we knocked up a bag full of plaster and I put it on the ceiling, as you saw from that previous clip. I also took time to fill out these areas. It's picking up a bit, not majorly. There was a bit of undulation here, big bend in it, so I've used a little bit of that to start dubbing this side out to make it a little bit easier. And these beads were a little bit tricky in the sense they stuck out. The old opening seemed to scoop out a little bit, so I've put a coat over there initially. So that's pretty much what a bag has done. What I'm going to do now is, because these are picking up, it's picking up a bit, I'm going to turn back around, flatten this ceiling in, and then, I don't know, depends how much this has gone, I might get a coat over down to 900 past that window, I assume. Yeah, I'll probably knock up about half a bag or something. First of all, flatten the ceiling in. So the ceiling is nicely flattened out. As you can see, it's still quite wet. So this is picking up. I think what I'm going to do is a couple couple of little stress cracks in there, but nothing too major. I think what I'm going to do is keep the dirty water from inside this bucket, add some fresh, clean water. I'm going to knock up about half a bag, and I'm going to get a coat over this, and anything that's left over, I'm going to start putting some attention to these areas which need a coat over this floated, nasty sand cement porous surface. So half a bag just got this wall on with its first coat. I had a little bit left over. You can see that this bead's a bit proud here, so this is going to need dubbing out. I've got a first coat over all this and started straightening up these beads, because it is quite probably the most awkward little bit of wall in the whole room. So it's starting to look a little bit more agreeable. Still got some residue left over, not much, because we've got lots of places for plaster to disappear to, so we can empty the bucket every time. I think what we're going to do now is put the second coat on the ceiling, and I'll sort of knock up fairly accurately for it, but maybe if we've got a little bit left over, like I say, there's plenty of places we can lose a little bit of gear should we need to. I've still got all that to do. If we was to knock up another whole bag and I think, oh, do you know what I mean? I need to get back on here, and it starts going off in the bucket. So we've got literally zero waste at the moment. Okay, so the ceiling has seen a wet brush and a flatten, and it's looking pretty good. Time for another one soon. I've given all this a flatten, and I've put sort of like a half tight coat over all this because I had a little bit left in the bucket. Now I've knocked up again, and hopefully what I'm going to do with that amount is get the last laying down coat across all this, round that bit round the side I just showed you, and hopefully get this bit of wall on as well. And then we're going to see how we're fixed with that. After I've got that all on, I'll probably drop back onto the ceiling, give that another flatten, and then I'll flatten all this in and reevaluate what's going on, how fast it's going, and whether we can push on or drop back and stay with what we've got. Whatever happens now, even if we do stay with that, obviously what we've got left, because this wall will be on, or what we'll have left is this wall, and then just this silly bit around here. So, even if we don't do anything else and we have to stay with all this, then we know we've got one more hit should we have to start from afresh again. And that's easily doable. So this room will be completed today. Right, so I've been some time now. The ceiling is done and finalled. You can see it's bowing off. This wall is one trowel away from being finalled. This needs laying down now. It's quite deep in places, so it was well handy to leave it. But yeah, it's pulling in quite quickly. This will need one more little final, but it's virtually there. So yeah, I didn't push on any further. I've actually had to sit back and get this all under control as it was starting to go. So we've cleaned the bucket right out and gone back to completely fresh water. And now's the time to knock up to put the rest of this room on, including these little bits under here. Knock up enough to get it all on. So I've pre-filled some of these nasty areas, and there's all rips in it there. That was exposed floating. Now I'm going to turn back and start getting this laid down and these filled in, giving this a little bit of time to pick up before we put the actual first coat on. Okay, so this has been laid down. This is first coat, this is first coat. So that's the only three things we do really have live. I need to get, the ceiling's done, have to get over this, the reveals are done. Need to give this a quick final, and this a quick final out here, which will take no time at all. And then we can concentrate on getting these walls under control, knocking up a second lot for this, lay this down, and then we can start getting tidied up. We've got about that much left in the bucket and a little bit left on the hawk, so we'll see how this starts picking up, and I might add that to the next gauge to put the second coat on this and this to speed things up a little bit, and we can get tidied up and start getting out of there. Okay, knocking up for the second coat now and using the dirty water, speed it up. So this is a job we did previously, and the room was not dissimilar to the kitchen that we're doing now. It's all looking pretty good. Now it's painted. Every now and again you do get a chance to come back and see how your work has turned out. You still need to do a bit of painting up there. When I did this job, I was unaware that there's going to be 3 downlights right on that wall, look, and casting a shadow. So it looks like it's come out alright, because if there's any discrepancies on that wall that are severe, that will show up with those lights shining down it in such a fashion. So it's a good job. I did it good. The outside is looking all good. It's even starting to dry out now. It's been quite warm in here, I've got to admit. All beads are looking pretty good. All lining up nicely. Nice and clean. All our internals are looking good. We are on -5, aren't we? Yeah. So yeah, we're all complete now. Lights are all cut out. Boxes cut out. Just a little bit of tidying up just to do, sweeping up. These curves have come out pretty good. So you curve around it, I'm in the light. It's easy to see that one this side. Yeah. So yeah, it's all pretty good. Bit of a longer day than usual because I've been by myself. I am without a labourer for the foreseeable future again. Hi guys, sorry for the abrupt ending on the actual plastering section of that video. The customer was just walking in, so I just shut it off quickly. So yeah, there you go. That was quite a complicated little room, and I probably did make it a little bit more complicated than it needed to be in the way that I broke everything up. But I think one point to mention is I'm getting a little bit older, so I'm like 50 years old. So plastering's not an easy job on the body. So by breaking the set up in smaller sections like that, you're kind of hitting things at the ideal time that they need to be hit. Now, if I went in there and knocked up 2 bags and put on a massive gauge and then run around like a headless chicken trying to get it, and it's going away on me, and I really have to put loads of pressure on the trowel to try and plane things off and stuff, that's when you start wearing and tearing and burning your body out, basically, because you're just, you know, you're using all your brawn but no brains, you know. So there's no point in getting older without getting artful. So you know, if you want some longevity in your plastering career, then it's not a bad idea to think about things a little bit more, and don't rely on the strain of your body so much. So yeah, that little bit of advice for you. Yeah, so the room took a little bit longer than I was expecting it to. I was without a labourer, but we got it done, and it was all in a nice finished quality, and everybody was happy. The kitchen fitter messaged me back today saying thanks very much for a lovely job, and I said no problem, just doing my job. So yeah, everybody was happy. If you did enjoy watching this video, like I say, it's kind of aimed more at intermediates. I will put it in for beginners in the title, but yeah, thanks for watching. Please hit that subscribe button and all that, and also I keep mentioning on every video now, there's a Facebook group which is called Plaster Master Smurf 74. If you want to ask any questions or want to tell me anything that I'm doing wrong, then come over there on Facebook. There's a group. You don't have to, it's a public group, you don't have to answer any questions or abide to any rules other than, you know, be polite to, you know, everybody, all that stuff. Yeah, come over there. Anyway, I won't rumble on too much because this video is already at 31 minutes and 18 seconds. So by putting this clip on, I'm making it a little bit longer. Right, have a good evening. I might put this up tonight, or I might schedule it for tomorrow. Who knows? I'll flip a coin for it. All right, take it easy, guys. See you on the next video.